The night air in New Phoenix carried a chill that cut through Ryan Mercer's thin maintenance jumpsuit as he trudged away from the Vexillion Medical Center. His shoulders ached from 12 hours of recalibrating atmospheric regulators, and his eyes burned from staring at diagnostic screens. All he wanted was to collapse into his bed and forget about oxygen levels, carbon scrubbers, and the endless complaints from alien physicians who didn't understand that humans couldn't breathe the same gas mixtures as them. The maintenance corridor exit led to a dimly lit service alley behind the hospital's imposing structure. As Ryan fumbled for his transit pass, a faint scraping sound caught his attention. He paused, listening. There it was again, metal wheels on concrete coming from the auxiliary exit, 50 meters down the wall. Ryan hesitated. His shift was over. Whatever hospital business happened after hours wasn't his concern. But something about the furtive nature of the sound made him curious. He moved closer, keeping to the shadows of the massive ventilation units. 2 Vexillion doctors emerged through the exit, pushing what looked like a standard medical gurney. Their elongated forms moved with the distinctive, undulating grace of their species' 6-fingered hands, manipulating the gurney controls with practiced efficiency. What struck Ryan as odd was how they kept glancing around, as if afraid of being observed. Protocol requires immediate removal, one said voice translator, rendering the clicking Vexillion language into flat, emotionless standard. The expense-to-benefit assessment was conclusive. Agreed, the second replied. Lamidian physiology requires specialized treatment protocols that exceed our mandated resource allocation. They wheeled the gurney to the edge of the hospital property, where the service road met the public transport lane. With mechanical precision, they activated the gurney's brake system, turned, and walked back toward the hospital without a backward glance. Ryan waited until they disappeared inside, before approaching the abandoned gurney. As he drew closer, his breath caught in his throat. Lying on the gurney was a Lamidian female. Her normally luminescent skin had faded to a dull gray-blue, with only faint pulses of light occasionally rippling across her surface. Her breathing came in shallow, uneven gasps, causing the delicate gill structures at her neck to flutter weakly. Her 4 upper limbs were restrained with standard medical cuffs, while her lower limbs were wrapped in some kind of pressure bandage. "Hello," Ryan whispered, not wanting to startle her. "Can you understand me?" Her large, pupilless eyes flickered open, revealing irises that swirled with diminishing bioluminescence. She made a soft, trilling sound that Ryan couldn't interpret without a translator. "I'm Ryan. I work at the hospital. What happened to you? Why did they leave you out here?" The Lamidian's mouth moved, forming words that came out as struggled whispers. "Not economically viable. Treatment. Too specialized." Ryan felt a surge of anger. He'd heard rumors about Vexillion medical protocols, their rigid cost-benefit algorithms that determined which patients received care, but he'd never witnessed the consequences so directly. "What's your name?" he asked, already unstrapping the restraints. "Vonra." She managed each syllable, causing ripples of light to pulse weakly across her skin. "Okay, Vonra. I'm going to help you." Ryan wasn't sure what he meant by that. He had basic first aid training for human emergencies, nothing for alien physiology. But he couldn't leave her here abandoned like malfunctioning equipment. As he released the last restraint, a datapad attached to the gurney lit up with Vonra's medical information. Most of it consisted of incomprehensible Vexillion medical terminology, but the summary was clear enough. Patient presents with cascade syndrome, affecting energy migration channels. Prognosis negative without specialized intervention. Treatment costs exceed acceptable parameters for non-citizen care. They had left her to die because treating her would be too expensive. Ryan made a decision that would change everything. He looked around to ensure no surveillance drones were passing, then unlocked the gurney's mobility function. "I'm taking you somewhere safe," he told Vonra. "Just hold on." Her luminescent eyes fixed on his face, a flicker of hope visible in their depths. "Why, help?" Ryan didn't have a complex answer. "Because it's the right thing to do." He began pushing the gurney toward the transit hub, mind racing through options. He couldn't take her to his small apartment. The building's security systems would flag an unauthorized alien presence immediately. Regular clinics would likely turn her away, just as the Vexillians had. Then he remembered Dr. Kazara. The Arcturan veterinarian had an unconventional practice on the fringes of the alien quarter. Ryan had taken his landlady's exotic pet there once when it had developed a strange fungal growth. Kazara treated all manner of non-human life forms with a cheerful disregard for official medical licensing restrictions. The transit hub was mercifully quiet at this late hour. Ryan covered Vanra with his jacket, hoping to hide her distinctive appearance, and programmed a destination into the gurney's navigation system. The automated transport pod arrived within minutes, its doors opening to an empty interior. "We need to be quick and quiet," Ryan told Vanra, as he maneuvered the gurney inside. "Can you hold on for another 20 minutes? Vanra nodded weakly, her skin briefly brightening before fading again. "I will try." The journey through New Phoenix's late-night transit system was a blur of anxiety for Ryan. Every stop brought the possibility of security scans or curious stares from other passengers. But luck was with them, and they reached the fringe district without incident. Dr. Kazara's clinic occupied the ground floor of a shabby building, wedged between a Taurian food market and a questionable electronics repair shop. The sign, Kazara's Xenobiological Care Center, flickered erratically, some of its characters permanently dark. Ryan pushed the gurney to the clinic's entrance and pressed the after-hours call button. A moment later, a gruff voice responded through the speaker. "Unless you're carrying a dying Centaurian wombat, or your credit account exceeds 6 digits, come back tomorrow." "Dr. Kazara, it's Ryan Mercer. I brought you a patient that the Vexillians threw out. She needs help." A brief silence followed. Then a series of locks disengaged, and the door slid open. Dr. Kazara stood in the entrance, all 4 of her eye stalks, swiveling to examine them. The Arcturan's bulky form filled the doorway, tentacle-like appendages, already reaching for medical instruments attached to her utility vest. "Bring her in," Kazara ordered, stepping aside. "And stop calling me doctor. I've told you it's an honorary title at best." Ryan pushed the gurney into the cluttered clinic. Unlike the sterile, geometrically precise environment of the Vexillian hospital, Kazara's space was chaotic, yet strangely welcoming. Exotic plants grew in hydroponic tubes along the walls, equipment of various origins sat on mismatched shelving, and the air smelled of herbal remedies and cleaning solutions. Lamidian female early reproductive cycle, Kazara observed circling the gurney. Significant decline in bioluminescence, respiratory distress, probable energy pathway disruption. A tentacle flicked out to grab a handheld scanner from a nearby table. "What did those calculating Vexillian leeches diagnose?" "Something called Cascade Syndrome," Ryan said, watching anxiously, as Kazara ran the scanner over Vanra's trembling form. All 4 of Kazara's eye stalks snapped upward in surprise. Stellar Cascade Syndrome, and they abandoned her typical efficiency-obsessed behavior. She continued scanning 2 of her appendages, simultaneously adjusting equipment settings, while another retrieved a vial of iridescent liquid from a refrigeration unit. "Can you help her?" Ryan asked. "Stabilize temporarily? Yes. Cure completely." Kazara made the Arcturan equivalent of a shrug, her upper body rippling. "That's more complicated." The veterinarian worked quickly, injecting the iridescent solution into Vanra's neck-gill structures and attaching monitoring devices to various points on her body. Within minutes, Vanra's breathing eased, and her skin began to show more consistent luminescence patterns. "I've administered a synthetic photon catalyst," Kazara explained. "It will help her energy pathways maintain minimal function, but it's not a permanent solution." Vanra's eyes had cleared somewhat, and she looked at Ryan with more focus. "Thank you," she said, her voice stronger, but still strained. "The Vexillians said I had no economic value to justify treatment." "Vexillians measure everything by cost-benefit analysis," Kazara said dismissively. "If they could quantify compassion, they'd probably find it inefficient too." Ryan pulled up a stool beside the gurney. What exactly is stellar cascade syndrome? Kazara activated a holographic display, showing a complex network of energy channels throughout a Limidian body. Limidians process energy differently from most species. They absorb and redistribute various forms of radiation through specialized pathways. The display highlighted several bottlenecked areas in the network. Stellar cascade occurs when these pathways begin to deteriorate, causing energy to back up and damage surrounding tissues. Is it fatal? Ryan asked. Without treatment, eventually, Kazara confirmed. The body's systems gradually lose power like a city experiencing rolling blackouts until the final shutdown. Vanra's luminescence dimmed momentarily. The Vexillians said there was no standard treatment protocol. They weren't entirely wrong, Kazara admitted. But no standard protocol doesn't mean no treatment options. It just means expensive specialized care that doesn't fit into their precious efficiency metrics. Ryan leaned forward. So what are the options? Kazara's eye stalks tilted in a way that suggested reluctance. There's only one treatment I know of with consistent success rates. Limidians originally evolved in deep ocean environments, rich in certain types of bioluminescent algae. These algae produce unique compounds that can repair damaged energy pathways. So we need to find this algae, Ryan said. Not just any bioluminescent algae, Kazara clarified. Specifically, European deep vent luminaria, only found in the hydrothermal vents beneath the ice of Jupiter's moon Europa. Ryan's hope deflated. Europa. That's not exactly around the corner. Hence, the Vexillians' decision, Kazara said. Obtaining the algae, creating the treatment, administering it correctly, all while maintaining life support for a non-registered Limidian patient. Their algorithms would never approve such expenses. Vanra's luminescence flickered in what Ryan was beginning to recognize as distress. I understand. I came to New Phoenix seeking work as an energy converter technician. I had no family sponsor, so I was not eligible for comprehensive health coverage. When the symptoms began, I hoped basic treatment would suffice. Ryan felt his resolve hardening. There has to be a way to get to Europa. Kazara's eye stalks swiveled toward him in surprise. You can't be serious. I am. Ryan wasn't sure where this determination was coming from, but he couldn't bear the thought of walking away. How long will your temporary treatment last? The photon catalyst, Kazara considered. With careful management and additional supportive treatments, perhaps 2 Earth weeks. 3 at the absolute maximum. Then we have 2 to 3 weeks to get to Europa and back, Ryan said. You're forgetting several problems, Kazara countered. 1, civilian travel to Europa is restricted to research personnel and authorized contractors. 2, you'd need specialized equipment to harvest the algae from deep-sea vents. 3, once harvested, the algae must be processed immediately to extract the active compounds before they degrade. Ryan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Okay, so it's complicated, but not impossible, right? Not technically impossible, Kazara admitted. Just practically infeasible for an atmospheric systems technician and a veterinarian with a questionable license. Vanra struggled to sit up. Please do not risk yourselves. I accepted this possibility when I left my settlement. Ryan gently helped her lie back down. Just rest for now. Let me think. He turned to Kazara. Can I access your terminal? I need to check something. The Arcturan gestured to a cluttered desk in the corner. Be my guest. But whatever you're planning, remember that the Vexillian Medical Center has probably already filed a report on their economically non-viable patient. They don't like loose ends that might challenge their decision-making. As if on cue, the clinic's exterior monitoring system chimed. Kazara quickly checked the display. Speak of the devils. Security drone Vexillian registry conducting a sweep of the area. They're looking for her already, Ryan asked, heart sinking. Standard procedure. Kazara explained, activating a switch that dimmed the clinic's lights. They'll claim it's to ensure proper case resolution, their euphemism for confirming that unwanted patients have conveniently expired without consuming additional resources. The drone passed by the clinic slowly, its sensors scanning through the windows. Ryan held his breath until the machine continued down the street. "They'll be back," Kazara warned. "And next time they might bring actual officers. We need to move her somewhere else soon." Ryan nodded grimly and turned his attention to the terminal. He accessed the public transportation schedules, focusing on cargo shipments to the outer system. Most followed standard routes that would be easy for authorities to monitor, but there had to be alternatives. While he searched, Kazara continued stabilizing Vanra, administering additional treatments, and monitoring her energy levels. The Limidian drifted in and out of consciousness, her skin alternating between periods of brighter luminescence and concerning darkness. After nearly an hour of searching, Ryan found something promising. "There's a private freight hauler scheduled to depart for the Jupiter system tomorrow morning. The Persistent is registered to haul mining equipment to Ganymede, but its flight path takes it past Europa. And you think they'll just agree to make an unscheduled stop at a restricted research zone because you ask nicely?" Kazara's tone was skeptical, but her eye stalks showed interest. "The captain is Malcolm Hardy," Ryan continued. "Ex-Earth Alliance military disciplined for excessive humanitarian concern during the Titan refugee crisis. He disobeyed orders to rescue civilians when it wasn't deemed cost-effective." "Sounds like someone who might sympathize with our situation," Kazara admitted. "But even if he agrees to help, how would you get Vanra to the spaceport? The transit systems have automated identity verification." Ryan considered the problem. "We'd need to avoid the main transit routes altogether. Take back Alley's service tunnels." "You'd need a guide," Kazara said. "Someone who knows the unofficial pathways." Ryan thought for a moment. "There's a Taurian maintenance worker named Grex who sometimes fixes the ventilation systems at the hospital. He mentioned once that his people have mapped out all the service corridors in the city." Kazara nodded. "Taurians are excellent at finding hidden routes. It's an evolutionary adaptation from their subterranean history." "Can you contact him?" Ryan asked. "I treated his nest sibling for scale rot last year," Kazara said. "He owes me a favor." While Kazara established communication with Grex, Ryan returned to Vanra's side. Her condition had stabilized somewhat, but the underlying deterioration continued. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice little more than a whisper. "You risk punishment from your authorities." Ryan didn't have a practiced answer, only the truth. "Because when those doctors wheeled you out and left you there, they weren't just abandoning a patient. They were abandoning the idea that life has value beyond economic calculations. I can't accept that." Vanra's skin rippled with a wave of luminescence that seemed to express both gratitude and concern. "My people have a saying, the brightest light comes from connections between souls, not stars. I believe you possess such brightness." Before Ryan could respond, Kazara returned. "Grex will meet us at the back entrance in 20 minutes. He knows a route to the spaceport that avoids all official checkpoints. But we'll need to move quickly." They spent the next quarter hour preparing Vanra for transport. Kazara transferred her from the gurney to a more portable hover stretcher and packed essential supplies to maintain her treatment regimen. Ryan helped secure the equipment and reviewed the route to Captain Hardy's docking bay. Just as they finished, the clinic's alarm chimed again. 2 security drones this time. Kazara reported, checking the monitor. "And they're scanning more intensively. We need to leave now." They exited through the clinic's rear door, which opened into a narrow service alley cluttered with waste containers and delivery platforms. Waiting for them was Grex, his scaled form, almost invisible in the shadows. The Taurian's 4 yellow eyes blinked in sequence as he assessed their group. "Dr. Kazara." He greeted his translator, rendering his sibilant language into standard. "You mentioned urgent transport needs." "This is Ryan and Vanra," Kazara explained quickly. "They need to reach Docking Bay 47 without encountering security or identity verification." Grex's head tilted eyes, fixing on Vanra's weakly glowing form. "A Limidian with energy pathway disruption. The Vexillians refused treatment." "How did you know?" Ryan asked. Taurians understand energy patterns, Grex said simply. And we understand Vexillian thought processes. They calculate value, not compassion. He gestured to a nearly invisible access panel in the alley wall. We will take the maintenance tunnels. Stay close and move quietly. As Grex opened the panel, revealing a narrow passage beyond the distinctive whine of security drones, grew louder behind them. They're expanding their search pattern, Kazara warned. Go now. I'll return to the clinic and claim ignorance if questioned. Thank you, Ryan said, maneuvering the hover stretcher toward the access tunnel. Don't thank me yet, Kazara replied grimly. Thank me when you return with that algae. She handed him a small medical kit. Instructions for administering the remaining doses of photon catalyst. Make them last. Ryan nodded, accepting the kit, and the responsibility it represented. Then, he followed Grex into the darkness, guiding Vonra's hover stretcher carefully through the narrow opening. The maintenance tunnels were a labyrinth of cramped passages dimly lit by emergency lighting that cast everything in an eerie blue glow. Grex moved with confident precision, selecting junctions and access ways that seemed indistinguishable to Ryan's eyes. These tunnels connect all essential infrastructure, Grex explained, as they navigated deeper into the network. My ancestors built similar passages on our homeworld. We understand the importance of alternative pathways when primary routes become dangerous. Vonra's condition remained stable, though her energy fluctuations were becoming more pronounced. The hover stretcher's built-in monitors displayed warnings that Ryan could only partially understand. How much farther to the spaceport? He asked Grex after what felt like hours of travel. We approach the outer boundary now, the Taurian replied. Beyond this point, we must cross the cargo processing zone. There will be workers but minimal security presence if we time our crossing correctly. They paused at a junction while Grex consulted what appeared to be a mental map, his eyes blinking in rapid sequences. After a moment, he pointed to a narrow vertical shaft. This maintenance lift will take us to the cargo level. From there, 1 kilometer of open territory to docking bay 47. The lift was barely large enough for the 3 of them, plus the hover stretcher, but they managed to squeeze inside. As they ascended, Ryan checked Vonra's vital signs again. Her breathing had grown more labored, and the luminescent patterns across her skin were becoming increasingly erratic. Hold on, he told her, adjusting the photon catalyst infusion. We're almost to the ship. If we don't succeed, Vonra struggled to speak. Please know that your kindness has been a gift regardless. Ryan shook his head. We'll succeed, I promise. The lift doors opened onto a vast warehouse space, filled with shipping containers and automated loading equipment. The early morning shift had just begun with workers of various species directing cargo toward waiting spacecraft. Docking Bay 47 is at the far end, Grex indicated. Timing is critical. The automated inventory drones follow predictable scanning patterns with approximate 40-second gaps. They waited behind a stack of containers until a scanning drone passed, then moved quickly across an open section of floor. Grex led them through a maze of cargo, expertly timing their movements to avoid both workers and security systems. They had covered more than half the distance when a cargo ship supervisor, a tall, multi-jointed being with a specialized worker badge, spotted them and called out. Unauthorized personnel, identify yourselves and present cargo documentation. Continue toward Bay 47, Grex told Ryan. I will create a diversion. Before Ryan could protest, the Taurian slipped away between cargo containers. Moments later, alarms began blaring on the opposite side of the warehouse. Warning: environmental containment breach in Section 12. All personnel evacuate immediately. As workers rushed toward emergency exits, Ryan seized the opportunity to push Vonra's hover stretcher forward at maximum speed. They reached Docking Bay 47 just as the security response was organizing itself. The ship, persistent, lived up to its name, an older model freighter that had clearly weathered decades of service. Its hull, marked with repairs and modifications that spoke of resourcefulness rather than luxury. The loading ramp was down, with final cargo being secured for departure. Ryan approached a weather-beaten human supervising the loading. Captain Hardy. The man turned, revealing a face lined with experience and a cybernetic left eye that whirred slightly as it focused. Depends who's asking and why they're bringing an unauthorized hover stretcher into my bay. My name is Ryan Mercer. I need passage to Europa for myself and a patient. It's a matter of life and death. Hardy's expression remained impassive, but his cybernetic eye scanned over Vanra with professional assessment. Limidian female critical energy pathway degradation. Vexillian medical rejection case. Ryan nodded, surprised by the captain's accurate evaluation. Hardy spat on the docking bay floor. Calculating bastards. Let me guess, stellar cascade, and you need European vent algae for treatment. Yes, Ryan confirmed. How did you... Seen it before. Hardy cut him off. Back during my Earth Alliance days. Similar case on Titan Colony. His face darkened. Orders were to prioritize essential personnel. I chose differently. A warning klaxon sounded in the distance. Hardy glanced toward the warehouse where security forces were now visible. Looks like you've upset the local authorities, he observed. Will you help us? Ryan asked urgently. Hardy studied them for a long moment, then made a brusque gesture toward his ship. Get aboard, quickly, and be prepared to work your passage. I don't run a charity operation, just a morally flexible one. Ryan maneuvered the hover stretcher up the loading ramp, relief washing over him. As they entered the cargo hold, Hardy was already calling orders to his crew. Seal up and prepare for immediate departure. Tell Control we've had a scheduling update. The ship's interior was utilitarian, but well-maintained with every available space optimized for cargo or essential systems. Hardy directed them to a small medical bay, tucked behind the main cargo area. It's basic but better than nothing, he said. Secure your patient while we break atmosphere. Ryan transferred Vanra to the medical bay's examination table and connected her monitoring equipment to the ship's power systems. He administered another dose of the photon catalyst, just as the engines roared to life. Hardy appeared in the doorway. We're leaving ahead of schedule. Might experience some turbulence when Port Authority realizes we haven't completed all our departure protocols. On cue, the ship lurched and vibrated as it powered away from the docking bay. They're attempting to engage docking clamps, Hardy reported, seemingly unconcerned. Unfortunate for them that we accidentally disconnected those interfaces during our last maintenance cycle. The turbulence increased momentarily, then smoothed out as the ship accelerated into the upper atmosphere. We've cleared New Phoenix airspace, Hardy announced. Now we just have to handle the orbital patrol vessels. Ryan stayed beside Vanra, monitoring her condition, while the ship maneuvered through Earth's orbital security network. After some tense radio exchanges, and what Hardy later described as creative flight plan reporting, the Persistent broke free into open space and set course for the Jupiter system. Transit time to Europa approximately 7 days. Hardy informed them once the ship had established its trajectory. That's pushing the engines harder than I'd like, but your Limidian friend doesn't look like she has time to spare. She doesn't, Ryan agreed. Thank you for doing this. Hardy dismissed the gratitude with a wave. I said you'd work your passage, and I meant it. My engineer could use help maintaining atmospheric systems during the journey. I understand that's your specialty. Ryan nodded. Atmospheric regulation and environmental controls. Good. Report to engineering after you've got your patient stabilized. Hardy turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, getting to Europa is only half your problem. The research stations don't take kindly to unauthorized visitors, and the deep water vents are restricted areas. You'll need a plan for accessing them. I was hoping you might have suggestions, Ryan admitted. Hardy's weathered face creased in a slight smile. As it happens, I maintain certain useful contacts from my military days. I'll see what can be arranged. Over the next 7 days, Ryan divided his time between assisting the ship's engineer with environmental systems and caring for Vanra. The Limidian's condition continued to deteriorate despite the photon catalyst treatments, but more slowly than feared. As Vanra's strength allowed, they talked. Ryan learned about her home settlement on a distant colony world where Lamidians had established energy conversion facilities that powered interstellar communication relays. She had left seeking better opportunities in New Phoenix, only to discover the prejudice and bureaucratic indifference that awaited non-citizens. In turn, Ryan shared his own story, his childhood on Earth, before atmospheric degradation had necessitated the construction of controlled environment cities, his technical training, and his growing disillusionment with systems that prioritized efficiency over compassion. "Your society values production metrics above all else," Vonra asked during one of their conversations. "Not all humans think that way," Ryan clarified. "But our institutions often do. It's easier to measure profit than kindness." Vonra's skin rippled with thoughtful luminescence. "My people measure value through energy transfer, what we give to others, not what we take for ourselves." The concept resonated with Ryan in ways he hadn't expected. Each day spent caring for Vonra, each moment, working toward her recovery, rather than his own comfort, felt more meaningful than years of maintaining atmospheric systems for the Vexillian hospital. On the 6th day of their journey, Hardy called them to the ship's bridge. The massive form of Jupiter filled the view screen with several of its moons, visible as tiny dots against the gas giant's swirling surface. "Europa coming into visual range," Hardy announced, adjusting the display to focus on a small, ice-covered moon. "And I've made contact with an old colleague who might help with your algae problem." The communication system activated, revealing the face of a stern-looking woman with graying hair and deep-set eyes. "This is Dr. Mara Hamish, independent researcher at Europa Station 7, Hardy introduced. "Dr. Hamish, these are the visitors I mentioned." The scientist's expression remained skeptical. "Captain Hardy claims you need access to deep vent algae samples for medical purposes. Is this connected to the Vexillian Medical Center alert that's been circulating through official channels?" Ryan tensed, but decided honesty was their best approach. "Yes. They refused to treat a Lamidian patient with stellar cascade syndrome because the cost-benefit analysis didn't justify the expense." Dr. Hamish's severe expression softened slightly. "Typical Vexillian calculation. They've been trying to establish a research outpost here for years, but their proposals always undervalue the ecological impact relative to projected profits." "Will you help us?" Ryan asked directly. "Coming to Europa without authorization is a serious violation," Hamish pointed out, "as is interfering with a Vexillian medical decision. I could lose my research permits for getting involved." "I understand the risk," Ryan acknowledged. "But without the algae, Vonra will die." Dr. Hamish studied them through the screen for a long moment. "I've had my own disagreements with bureaucratic value assessments. Bring your patient to the South Polar Research Station. Dock at Maintenance Bay E3. It's monitored less frequently. I'll meet you there." The final approach to Europa required all of Hardy's piloting skill. The moon was officially restricted to authorized research vessels, with automated defense systems positioned to discourage casual visitors. By approaching from Jupiter's shadow and transmitting identification codes that Dr. Hamish had provided, they managed to reach the designated docking area without triggering alarms. The research station was a modest facility, embedded in Europa's icy crust, with most of its structures extending deep below the surface. Dr. Hamish met them at the airlock, her stern demeanor unchanged, but her actions speaking of compassion, as she immediately examined Vonra. "Advanced stage cascade," she confirmed after scanning the Lamidian. "We'll need to harvest the algae quickly." She led them through the station to a specialized laboratory, where diving equipment and submersibles were stored. "The hyperthermal vents where the luminaria grow are approximately 3,000 meters below the ice," Dr. Hamish explained. "We'll use the research submersible to reach the collection depth." Ryan asked. "I'm going with you," Hamish stated, matter-of-factly. "The algae must be collected and processed correctly to preserve its medicinal properties. And frankly, I don't trust amateurs not to damage the vent ecosystem." Hardy, who had accompanied them from the ship, crossed his arms. "What about station security?" I've rerouted the monitoring systems to show a scheduled maintenance dive, Hamish said. We have approximately 6 hours before questions arise. Preparations moved quickly after that. While Dr. Hamish gathered specialized collection equipment, Hardy helped Ryan transfer Vanra to the station's medical facility. The Lamidian's condition had become critical, with long periods of non-responsiveness and dramatically reduced luminescence. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Hardy asked, as they watched Dr. Hamish prepare the submersible. 3,000 meters under ice on a restricted moon, harvesting protected organisms, that's multiple violations of planetary protection laws. "I'm sure," Ryan said without hesitation. Hardy nodded. "Then I'll monitor communications from here and prepare for a rapid departure once you return. Be careful down there. Europa's ocean isn't forgiving of mistakes." The submersible was designed for research rather than comfort, with barely enough space for Ryan and Dr. Hamish among the scientific equipment. As they sealed the hatch and began their descent through the access shaft drilled through Europa's ice shell, Ryan felt a growing sense of both determination and apprehension. "Have you done this before?" he asked, as darkness enveloped them. 17 deep dives, Hamish replied, focused on the submersible's controls, though usually with more preparation and authorization. The descent through the ice took nearly an hour, the submersible's exterior lights revealing the layered history of Europa's frozen surface. Finally, they broke through into the vast ocean that lay beneath. "European Global Ocean," Dr. Hamish announced with undisguised wonder in her voice. 95 kilometers deep, in some places completely encircling the moon. More water than all of Earth's oceans combined. The submersible's lights illuminated surprisingly clear water, extending into inky blackness below them. Hamish activated additional sensors that displayed a three-dimensional map of the nearby ocean floor. "The vent field we need is located 17 kilometers north of our position. Depth approximately 3,200 meters. We'll follow the ocean current to conserve power." As they descended deeper, the pressure outside the submersible's hull increased dramatically. Occasional creaks and groans reminded them of the crushing forces being held at bay by the vessel's reinforced structure. The luminaria evolved to harness both thermal and radiological energy from the vents, Dr. Hamish explained, as they traveled. Their biochemistry is unique, capable of converting multiple energy forms into bioluminescent output. That's why they're effective for treating Lamidian energy pathway disorders. The journey to the vent field was largely uneventful until they reached approximately 2,000 meters depth. At that point, the submersible's proximity sensors began registering large biological entities moving in the darkness beyond their lights. European predator fauna, Hamish identified calmly. "Nothing to worry about as long as we don't activate the exterior sampling equipment yet. They're attracted to electromagnetic fields and vibrations." Ryan wasn't reassured, especially when one creature briefly entered their illumination cone, a sinuous form, nearly the length of the submersible, with multiple sensory appendages, and what appeared to be electrical discharge organs along its flanks. "Just passing through," Hamish commented as the creature disappeared into the darkness. "They rarely attack objects as large as our vessel." "Rarely?" Ryan questioned. "Science is about probability, not certainty," she replied with a hint of amusement. They continued downward, the water pressure mounting and the submersible's hull protesting more vocally. At 3,000 meters, the ocean floor came into view, a dark, volcanic landscape, punctuated by the ethereal glow of hydrothermal vents. "Vent field directly ahead," Hamish reported. "Prepare collection equipment." The submersible approached a particularly active vent, where superheated water billowed upward, carrying minerals and nutrients. Surrounding the vent was a garden of bioluminescent algae, their delicate tendrils swaying in the currents, glowing with an intensity that lit the ocean floor for dozens of meters in all directions. European Deep Vent Luminaria. Dr. Hamish identified with reverence. One of the most remarkable organisms in the solar system. They convert thermal energy radiation and chemical nutrients into bioluminescence with nearly perfect efficiency. She positioned the submersible carefully near the vent and extended a collection arm equipped with specialized containment vessels. "We need 3 distinct samples," she instructed Ryan. "Primary growth from the vent mouth, secondary filaments from the outer colony, and mature spore clusters from the periphery. Each contains different compounds necessary for the treatment." The collection process required precision and patience. Each sample had to be carefully harvested without damaging the delicate structures, then immediately sealed in preservation solution. Ryan operated the submersible's stabilizers, while Dr. Hamish controlled the collection equipment. They had secured the first 2 samples and were positioning for the third when the submersible's warning system activated. Proximity alert. Hamish reported checking the sensors. Multiple large entities approaching from the northeast. And, she paused, expression darkening. Surface communication indicates an unauthorized vessel has entered Europa orbit. Vexillian registry. "They followed us?" Ryan asked, dismayed. "Apparently." Hamish worked quickly to secure the final sample. "They must have tracked the persistent or monitored communications with the research station." The proximity alerts became more urgent as biological entities circled the submersible, apparently agitated by their presence or the collection activities. "We need to leave now," Hamish announced, retracting the collection arm with the final sample secured. "The Vexillians are demanding access to the station, claiming pursuit of fugitives interfering with authorized medical protocols." As they powered up the submersible's ascent thrusters, one of the European predators struck the vessel, causing it to spin violently. Warning lights flashed across the control panel as stabilizers struggled to compensate. Hull integrity at 87%. Hamish reported fighting with the controls. "We can still make it to the surface, but it won't be a comfortable ride." The ascent was indeed turbulent, with the creatures following them for several hundred meters before losing interest. As they rose through the dark water, Ryan contacted Hardy using the submersible's communication system. "We have the samples, but Vexillian enforcers have arrived. What's the situation at the station?" "Not good." Hardy's voice crackled through the speaker. "They've docked a security vessel and are demanding station-wide searches. Dr. Hamish's colleagues are stalling them with procedural questions, but that won't last long." "Can we still reach the persistent?" Ryan asked. "If you surface at the secondary ice shaft 2 kilometers east of the main station, I can meet you there with portable surface transport. We'll have to move quickly." Dr. Hamish adjusted their course immediately. "Changing ascent coordinates now. Estimated surface time 12 minutes. The final approach to the secondary shaft was tense, with Ryan monitoring the sample's containment integrity, while Hamish navigated the narrower ice passage. When they finally broke through to the surface, Hardy was waiting with an ice transport vehicle typically used for surface exploration. "The Vexillians have started their search," he reported as they transferred the precious algae samples to insulated containers. "They're working from the main hub outward, so we have maybe 15 minutes before they reach this area." They abandoned the submersible and raced across Europa's icy surface toward the distant form of the persistent, which Hardy had relocated to a less obvious position. Behind them, alarm lights flashed at the research station as the Vexillian security forces expanded their search. "They've spotted us," Hardy announced grimly as they loaded the samples onto his ship. "Prepare for emergency departure." The Persistent's engines were already warming up as they secured themselves inside. Through the viewports, Ryan could see a Vexillian security vessel rising from the research station, turning in their direction. "They have superior armaments and engines," Hardy noted, as he activated the launch sequence. "But I have experience and Jupiter's gravity well. Sometimes that's enough to even the odds." The freighter lifted off, accelerating away from Europa's surface with all available power. The Vexillian vessel followed, gaining ground rapidly. "They're preparing to engage docking measures," Hardy reported, studying the tactical display. "Standard procedure for interdicting suspected medical protocol violators." Ryan watched anxiously as the distance between the ships decreased. "Can we outrun them?" "Not conventionally," Hardy admitted. But we can outmaneuver them. He adjusted their course, bringing them into a sweeping trajectory around Jupiter itself. Most security pilots avoid close gravitational interactions, too unpredictable for their regulation mindsets. The Persistent dove toward the massive gas giant, using its gravity to accelerate, while simultaneously implementing a series of erratic course changes that the larger, more ponderous Vexillian vessel struggled to match. "They're deploying immobilization fields," Hardy announced. "Brace for potential system disruptions." The ship shuddered as invisible energy waves washed over it, temporarily interfering with some navigation systems. Hardy switched to manual controls, piloting with the intuition of decades of experience. "Hamish, what's the fastest way to process those algae samples into usable medicine?" Ryan asked, as they continued their evasive maneuvers. The scientist was already working with the samples in a makeshift laboratory setup in the cargo bay. "I need approximately 2 hours to extract and synthesize the active compounds. Can you keep us intact that long?" Hardy's expression was grim, but determined. "I'm planning to use Jupiter's radiation belts to mask our signature, then execute a slingshot maneuver around Ganymede. It should buy us some time." The next 2 hours were a masterclass in desperate piloting. Hardy guided the Persistent through radiation zones that temporarily blinded the Vexillian pursuers, sensors, executed tight orbital maneuvers around Jupiter's smaller moons, and finally used Ganymede's gravity to fling them onto an escape trajectory that the Vexillian vessel couldn't match without extensive recalculation. "We've got maybe 30 minutes before they adjust course and resume pursuit," Hardy estimated, as they put distance between themselves and the Jupiter system. "How's that medicine coming?" Dr. Hamish emerged from the cargo bay, holding a container of luminescent blue liquid. "Synthesis complete. The compounds are ready for administration." They returned to the medical bay where Vanra lay unconscious, her luminescence barely visible. Her monitoring equipment showed critical energy pathway failure throughout her system. "We need to administer this immediately," Dr. Hamish said, preparing the injection equipment. "The compounds work by creating temporary energy shunts around damaged pathways, then gradually repairing the original structures." Ryan watched anxiously as Hamish injected the luminescent solution directly into multiple points on Vanra's body. For several tense minutes, there was no visible change. Then gradually, waves of stronger light began pulsing through the Lamidian skin. "The primary pathways are responding," Hamish confirmed, checking her instruments. "Secondary and tertiary networks beginning to stabilize." Over the next hour, Vanra's condition improved steadily. Her breathing deepened and strengthened, and the luminescent patterns across her skin became more organized and vibrant. Finally, her eyes opened, focusing first on Ryan, then on Dr. Hamish and Hardy. "You succeeded," she asked, her voice weak but clear. "We did," Ryan confirmed, overwhelmed with relief. "How do you feel?" "Like my inner light was nearly extinguished, then rekindled," she said, luminescence rippling across her skin in what Ryan now recognized as an expression of deep emotion. "I cannot repay such a gift." "No repayment necessary," Hardy said gruffly. "Though if you're feeling grateful, you could direct some of that energy toward our engines. We've still got Vexillian enforcers on our tail." Dr. Hamish administered a second dose of the medicine, explaining, "You'll need regular treatments for approximately 1 standard month. After that, your pathways should have rebuilt themselves sufficiently to maintain normal function." As Vanra continued to recover, Hardy plotted their return course to avoid further encounters with Vexillian security. They would need to avoid official ports and registered transit lanes, extending their journey, but reducing the risk of capture. During the long journey back, Ryan and Vanra spent hours talking, their connection deepening beyond rescuer and patient. Ryan explained Earth customs and history, while Vanra shared stories of Lamidian culture and their unique perspective on energy and life. "My people believe that energy is never truly created or destroyed, only transformed and shared," she told him one evening as they sat in the observation dome, watching stars slide past. Each connection between beings creates new patterns of energy, unique and precious. Her hand, now glowing with healthy luminescence, rested near his. When their fingers touched, Ryan felt a subtle tingling sensation, as if gentle electricity passed between them. "Is that," he began. "Energy sharing." Vanra confirmed, her skin brightening. "A form of connection my people value deeply. It is insignificant that you can feel it. Most non-Limidians cannot." The implications of this connection developed over the following weeks, as they made their circuitous way back toward Earth. By the time Hardy announced they were approaching the outer colonies, where they could safely dock without Vexillian interference, Ryan and Vanra had formed a bond neither had anticipated. "What will you do now?" Hardy asked them, as they prepared to disembark at a small trading outpost in the asteroid belt. The Vexillians aren't known for forgetting protocol violations. Ryan looked at Vanra, who had fully recovered her strength and luminescence. "We've been discussing options. There are independent colonies that don't enforce Vexillian medical standards, places where Vanra's energy conversion skills would be valued." Dr. Hamish, who had chosen to travel with them rather than face questions about her involvement at Europa Station, offered another perspective. "There's also the possibility of challenging the Vexillian protocols directly. Your case could establish precedent for valuing life beyond economic calculations." "That would be a difficult path," Hardy warned, "but potentially more impactful in the long term." The decision wasn't made immediately. Ryan and Vanra spent several months moving between independent settlements, always staying ahead of Vexillian notices. During this time, their relationship continued to evolve, the energy connection between them growing stronger and more complex. 6 months after their Europa expedition, while sheltering in a remote colony on Mars' southern hemisphere, Vanra made a discovery that changed everything. "Ryan," she called to him one morning, her luminescence pulsing with unprecedented patterns. "I need to show you something." She guided his hand to rest against her abdomen, where he felt a distinct electrical sensation, different from their usual energy, sharing more focused and rhythmic. "Is that?" he asked, unable to complete the question. "Yes," Vanra confirmed, her skin glowing with joy. "A new energy pattern forming, a child part Limidian, part human." The implications were staggering. Interspecies reproduction between humans and Limidians had been theoretically possible, but exceedingly rare due to fundamental differences in energy processing. Their unique connection, perhaps strengthened by the energy pathway treatments or their shared experiences, had somehow overcome those barriers. "The medical significance of this is extraordinary," Dr. Hamish noted when they shared the news. "A human Limidian child would demonstrate biological compatibility that the Vexillians have long denied in their treatment protocols." The pregnancy progressed with both wonder and challenges. Hamish monitored Vanra's condition closely, adapting human prenatal care to accommodate Limidian physiology. When complications arose in the second trimester energy pathway, instabilities, similar to Cascade syndrome but distinct, they worked together to develop treatments based on their Europa expedition findings. As the birth approached, Hardy reappeared with surprising news. "The Vexillian Medical Center has revised their treatment protocols for interspecies cases," he reported. "Apparently, word of your successful treatment and pregnancy has circulated through scientific channels. They're claiming it as a re-evaluation based on new evidence." "They're not still pursuing us for protocol violations?" Ryan asked skeptically. "Oh, they are," Hardy confirmed with a wry smile. "But they're equally interested in studying your child. Enough that they've offered amnesty in exchange for allowing their xenobiologist to document the birth and development." After careful consideration and negotiation with Dr. Hamish, serving as their medical advocate, Ryan and Vanra cautiously accepted modified terms. They would return to New Phoenix under protection of scientific observation status, with guarantees against prosecution and assurances of proper medical care. The birth occurred 3 weeks later in a specially prepared facility at the Vexillian Medical Center. the same institution that had once abandoned Vanra as economically non-viable. Their daughter, whom they named Nova, emerged with skin that shifted between human tones and subtle Lamidian luminescence, particularly when experiencing strong emotions. The medical significance was immediate and far-reaching. Nova's existence demonstrated a biological compatibility that forced revision of multiple Vexillian medical protocols. Studies of her unique energy pathways led to breakthroughs in treating conditions previously deemed inefficient to address. More personally, Nova represented something profound for Ryan and Vanra. As they watched her grow over the following years, developing both human resilience and Lamidian energy sensitivity, they saw living proof that compassion could transcend calculation, that connection could overcome categorical divisions. "She bridges worlds," Vanra observed on Nova's third birthday, watching their daughter's skin glow with happiness as she played. "Just as you bridge the distance to Europa to save a stranger." Ryan took her hand, feeling the familiar energy connection between them. "Not a stranger," he corrected. "Just someone whose value couldn't be calculated." The Vexillian Medical Center eventually established an entire department dedicated to interspecies medicine, with standardized protocols for conditions previously dismissed as economically unjustifiable. They never officially acknowledged that these changes stemmed from one technician's refusal to accept their abandonment of a Lamidian patient, but the connection was clear to those who knew the story. Dr. Kazara expanded her Xenobiological Care Center into a fully accredited facility, with Dr. Hamish joining as research director. Their unconventional approaches to interspecies medicine gradually gained acceptance, challenging the rigid efficiency metrics that had long dominated healthcare. Captain Hardy continued his morally flexible freight operations, though he now occasionally transported medical supplies to underserved colonies that fell outside Vexillian service parameters. He claimed it was simply good business, but his regular visits to check on Nova suggested other motivations. Grex and his Taurian community found their expertise in alternative pathways increasingly valued, eventually establishing an official consultation service for infrastructure planning that incorporated their unique perspective on hidden connections. As for Ryan Vanra and Nova, they built a life that balanced privacy with purpose. Their home became an unofficial waypoint for beings seeking treatment options beyond rigid protocols. They never actively sought to undermine the Vexillian system, they simply demonstrated through their everyday existence that some values transcend calculation. The brightest light comes from connections between souls, not stars. Vanra often reminded their increasingly diverse circle of friends, and in the luminescent glow of their daughter's smile, part human warmth, part Lamidian energy, that truth was undeniable.